Hey Joe.
Hey Ben, good to see you.
Yeah, excited, super excited to talk. Last few student spotlights that we've recorded have been mostly technical, super technical people, and you obviously have a strong sales background. So I'm interested in getting that perspective and having others learn from you with that as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Um, but pleased to be chatting.
um, so yeah, before we start, what is that map in your background?
This is the U.S. and British Virgin Islands.
Mm.
I've been there twice with my family, and have absolutely loved it. And it was a gift from my dad. So looking at this, I am instantly brought back to good times and sunshine and laughter.
I love that. Nice. Where are you based? Where do you live?
So I've been in Washington D.C. since this past October,
Mhm.
and I've been lucky to kind of bounce around. My wife and I, prior to that, we lived in Chicago for 5 years. I was in Boston for 3 years prior to that, and Uganda prior to that. So yeah, bunch of cool places.
Amazing. Okay, so let's dive in. Can you talk to us a little bit about um, who you are and where you were before you discovered Clay and Clay Bootcamp?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been in healthcare for 10 years. And I think, like you mentioned, my journey into Clay and Clay Bootcamp is naturally pretty different from other people.
Mhm.
So my experience had kind of been following people that I found interesting and solutions and problems that I found important and innovative. And from uh, that took me to a primary care facility in Uganda, where I led an initiative to build a labor and delivery ward. It led me to electronic medical records implementations at small hospitals, and got into sales. Really fell in love with the opportunity of how do I solve people's problems and help them meet their goals through solutions that I found to be important. So I joined a health economics and outcomes research consulting firm and was selling large consulting projects to pharmaceutical companies. Luckily pivoted into SaaS and worked for two software companies that made it easy to screen and connect patients to community resources. And then I left that company in 2023. And for the past, wow, it's crazy, 2 years, I've been doing fractional work all within healthcare, which I love.
Mhm.
So how I came to Clay Bootcamp was as a salesperson who was fascinated by this opportunity to use automation and hyper personalized data enriched experiences for potential buyers to generate more leads and really expand my own capacity, right? There's 8 or so hours in the day. But how could I really extend my reach and drive a bigger impact for my current and future customers? And prior to that, like I was pretty skeptical about like mass email and tech tools to generate leads and close business. Whenever took time to manually personalize email outreach, it would work, but it wasn't scalable.
Mhm.
And whenever I did activities that were scalable, they never got any replies, right?
I
Like,
see.
hello, blah. I saw that you work at company name. I sell a widget, blah, blah, blah. Do you want to meet?
Mhm.
And really just never got any results and was kind of sort of saying, this is not the way that I have closed deals and will not close deals. And that's fine.
Yeah.
And a friend introduced me to Clay. And I think, like many people, I got sucked into this vacuum of YouTube videos. And
Mhm.
oh my gosh, this thing is incredible. And look at all of these use cases, and was like, wait a minute, what might this look like for me?
Yeah.
And we'll sort of talk about my Clay Bootcamp journey, but it made a lot of sense to invest in myself and my business and my customers, to dive in. And so what I've been doing now and how I've pivoted and expanded my offering is I run a go-to-market and sales enablement agency specifically for healthcare.
Mhm.
So rather than focus on a specific aspect of the GTM workflow, such as I just do inbound or I'll just clean your CRM, I've found, healthcare technology companies need all the above,
Yeah.
but they also need some domain expertise, which is what I'm able to bring.
Yeah.
Uh, And what I find really cool about this is I'm able to work with, small startups with a couple of people, all the way to large enterprise organizations with close to 100,000 people. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you for the context. That's awesome. Okay, so you went down this YouTube rabbit hole. How did that lead to Clay Bootcamp, and why did you choose to join?
I created a free account on Clay and started to implement some of the things I was learning, but ultimately was not having success, was a little directionless, kind of like chasing my tail, like, oh, that's a cool enrichment. I'll spend some credits on that. And then it's like, wait a minute, that's not helpful for anyone. And I sort of like took some time to process, and I was like, wait a minute, the way that I learn is through community. It's through a personalized approach where I can ask someone a million questions and they give me honest feedback. It's a combination of live and asynchronous. That's when I've learned best in the past. I think this is a good opportunity for my business. How could I invest in myself and maybe find something that really fits that need? And again, just before all of this, Nathan, like think about the services that I was doing was not grounded in automation and setting up GTM tech stack whatsoever. So think pitch deck design and training sales reps and opportunity management coaching and fractional sales rep work and financial planning. But really the biggest problem that I was noticing were, how do I generate more leads and how do I close more deals?
Yep.
And how do I close more deals? I can definitely help with that. And I think Clay has a lot of potential there. But in terms of generating more leads, there's so much opportunity.
Amazing.
So I was playing around, trying to understand what types of training programs and like learning communities exist. And I was kind of like Goldilocks. I was like, wait a minute, this has good content, but it's not going to provide the support. This has good support, but maybe the content isn't as strong. And I met with you and I was like, this person sees me. Like Nathan just sees my goals and is helping me figure out what they should be. Not like in the limited way, but like how I could dream big. And that's really like where I got excited, learned a little bit more, and I was like, this is for me. So when I think about the program that you've built at Clay Bootcamp, it's structured on one end, right? There's a very clear path. Students are going through the learning modules. There's these very like predetermined workflows, but it's also really customized to each student's experience. So the way that I got customized mentoring and coaching, not just formally in the way that's provided, but the fact that there's this incredible community, I'd love, right? So I'm a social creature. I wanted something with a building group of people, and I can just drop a question in the Slack channel, and all of a sudden I'm talking to someone 5,000 miles away, and they're like, wow, I love this idea. Here's how you should do it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. So, I think my Clay Bootcamp experience, when I reflect on it and the way I still love contributing and taking away from the community that you've built, is there's like a no ego environment. There's a high quantity of how can I help others? How can I brainstorm and just like help other people be better and improve what I'm trying to build in a very social, non-cringy sort of way.
I love that. Thank you for the kind words. I'm
Yeah,
glad it's was there, you may have already answered this, but what surprised you when you joined?
So I think my primary goal starting out on the Clay Bootcamp journey was like, I want to be a Clay expert and figure out how I can really technically operationalize this. And what I found out was both the curriculum and the community and the coaching and support was just as much focused on how we can help you make this a business, how we can help you carve out your niche and develop it, and just how we can help you not make these mistakes that others have made. That I loved, because while I think of myself as a risk taker and someone who swings big, I'd rather not repeat mistakes of others and take the transferable learnings from someone else and do something with that. So I would say like the very short description of like what I didn't expect to find was like people that were aggressively in my corner trying to help me turn this business into something bigger than I had originally thought it to be. So that got me really excited, and I'm still able to engage with that, which I love. Like the vibrancy of the Clay Bootcamp Slack channel and network is super impressive and like essential to my takeaways of the program.
So while we're on the topic of aggressive people aggressively in your corner, do you want to give any shout outs to anyone in the community? Or
I think like at a very basic level, shout out to you for sort of like seeing me and helping me understand what was possible and helping me like carve out this very personalized, though scalable journey. Like a lot of gratitude to you. And also like a major shout out to my coach Niab, who just added a layer of like fun and surprise and learning and pushing me and like telling me I'm wrong and telling me to look here. Like it was just a relationship that really lent itself to like a lot of learning really quickly.
Mm.
And my mentor Sagar, who was also just an incredible thought partner in how I can create scale, but also create like a really special experience on a individual customer level. And then I've had the opportunity to both work formally and informally with other members of the Clay Bootcamp community, and for that, like I'm just super grateful. So there's just an endless quantity of people that are kind, creative, and just like willing to share their experiences, which like I don't know is really important these days.
I love that. Um, Happy to hear. Yeah. What's one win that you've experienced so far? I'll ask you about challenge as well, but what's one win that you've had that you're proud of?
There's two things that come to mind. One is I cleaned an entire CRM and then helped them increase the size of their TAM with just like a thoughtful approach around sort of like their ideal customer. They focus on selling consulting services to small businesses, and this required a lot of time and energy into list building, which to me at first I was like, oh, you just use the clay enrichment, find people. And I was like, wait a minute, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. We're thinking about businesses that maybe have 50 to 200 people in rural areas. So a lot of time and energy that I'm proud of on the list building front, the validated emails piece, which we'll talk about, I think, like ensuring this is high quality contact information. And then creating prompts that really were well aligned with like their business goals. So for example, they needed to pull a very specific set of employment classification codes for OSHA.
Mm-hmm.
So creating prompts that were able to get them the data they needed so they can now use that in marketing segmentation work, I'm super proud
I
of.
love that.
And I sort of mentioned, right, the agency that I'm building, I want to sort of be a Swiss Army knife, but really focus on the industry that I love and I find interesting. So something totally different was another project for a different customer that provides clinical services to employers where 3% of outreach emails turned into book meetings because who doesn't like results? So I think, those are things that I'm looking to build off on. And I think those wins, maybe I've learned along the way, and this is not just a Clay Bootcamp thing, but professionally, where possible, try to be even keeled, like aggressively celebrate the wins, but also like don't get cocky about the wins, right? Like the next project is not going to come as easy. You need to approach it like with a clean slate.
Yeah.
And at the same time, don't let the lows really frustrate you. And that's advice that I need to tell myself often. Like, I think it can be difficult, but if you're experiencing challenges with a project, right? Again, lean into that Clay Bootcamp community, but also it's okay to swing and miss. Like, what are you learning from that is the biggest takeaway.
Yep.
And that's what I've picked up from others and kind of my experiences in working with clients.
Makes sense. Nice. Yeah. You said with the TAM mapping, how much did you expand their TAM? It sounded like it was
200, like 250% probably. I'm really looking forward to seeing what that does in terms of enabling their marketing and like cold outreach capabilities.
Mm.
One thing that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about is lead scoring, right? So just because an account is in your like looks like an ideal fit, there's all these little clues and breadcrumbs on the internet, either public or via data brokers, that can alert you to like they're not actually a good fit, or wow, this is where you need to spend all of your time. You need to buy them cookies. You need to knock on their door. Like they are like such they are struggling in such a way where your product can only help them. So yeah, a good exercise and reminder from that project.
Nice. What's one challenge that you ran into and overcame?
In a very short amount of time, I learned a lot about email deliverability. Pre-Clay Bootcamp, my impression was like, email copy, that's your problem. You got crappy copy. And it's not personalized. And I've learned so much the good way and the hard way about deliverability, how not to. And there's some gospel out there. There's also some people that have very different opinions. So if we're thinking about advice for others, you're going to hear a lot of different noise. Sometimes it just makes sense to just like listen to one or two people on specific topics, because you will otherwise get bounced around from all these different perspectives. You're going to get whiplash, and then you're going to be like, but that person's an expert. They told me to do this. That person's also an expert. They told me to do that. And then you're just going to be confused. So just like be yourself and try and limit the noise around where you get these ideas. But essentially, this is an area, Nathan, where I was like, wait a minute, I'm not an expert on deliverability, but I know people who are, and I can pay them a reasonable amount of money to help me set up an email infrastructure. Shout out to the team at Scaled Mail.
Nice.
So I can just be like really thoughtful about how I'm using my time, and I'm not hunched over at my computer being like, how much warm-up time do we have left? You know what I mean? So that was like one really strong learning, and I've improved, and now I'm never going to make those mistakes again.
Nice.
You shared with me something brilliant, which is not intuitive and not easy to listen to, but it's, before going out and signing 10 clients, I'm really glad I didn't take your advice, is start small and develop systems and processes that work, especially if you're bringing on team members, right? So, figure out how long it takes to design a project, how long it takes to get info from your client, how long it takes to run the clay tables, how long it takes to write the email copy and validate it with a friend in the industry. Right size that client engagement model before you start getting the wheels turning. And that way you can figure out what does success look like, what will I scrap, and also do I need help in where? And sort of complementing with like, I'm really good at this, I suck at that. Who can help me in a reasonable way to address that smaller area?
That's I at one point you were closing deals left and right. I'm like, I am starting to get worried about Joe because he's too good at sales. And like,
thank you. I like appreciate your advice so much, and I think like I often have the urge to just like sprint and do everything all at once. And I think that's why you also need to develop, if you're starting an agency, you need like an informal board, nothing formal, but just people that you communicate with on the phone every now and then, Slack messages every now and then, send them a gift card to let them know they rock. But like, I think having a group of people who continually understand your business is going to be really important as you look to change and modify it along the way.
Nice. So as we close the student spotlight, what's one thing that someone who's new to Clay or GTM engineering or just this space and they're trying to start their business, what would you recommend?
I think two things. One is focus, see if you can remove the jargon when you describe the work you do. And what I've done is I've spoken to people not about like, I can help you run this enrichment, but what problem are you trying to solve? Here's the results we'll aim towards. And then here's how we'll do it. And you don't have to spend as much time with the here's how we'll do it. But make sure you really understand the problems related to, maybe it's meeting generation, maybe it's the way they enrich their data, maybe the fact that they're not enriching their data, or like really understand every aspect of their current operations. And I guess like that leads into the second thing, which would be discovery.
Mm-hmm.
So I've probably closed, I don't know, over 50 deals across multiple sectors within healthcare. Mm-hmm. Good discovery is the number one predictor of, is the deal going to close? So what is the current state? And break that down into facts, problems, impacts of the problems, root cause, mm-hmm. and what emotional distress is this creating? Yeah. And once you know this, I think you're in a great position to position your offering. There's plenty of amazing resources out there about this. I love this book by Keenan. It's called Gap Selling. But yeah, I would say focus a lot on discovery. Get rid of the jargon. There's a ton of opportunities with companies out there who are not doing anything in the space of automation. So be there to help them understand what's possible, and maybe carve out a niche, right? Mm-hmm. I chose to focus on an industry. Maybe you focus on a specific aspect of the GTM funnel, but be yourself as well. Sorry, this is more than you asked for.
No, I love it.
Whenever I've tried to impersonate someone else in my career, like, oh, I like what they're doing, I'm going to do that too. It's not as successful, and I definitely don't have as much.
I see.
So when I decide to do what I find interesting, I have a lot more fun, and I think I'm more successful in however way we want to measure that.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. The not doing discovery resonates a lot with me. I've seen even clay experts, and I'm not saying it's exactly wrong, but a lot of clay experts will jump on the call, talk for about 2 minutes. Oh, that's what you want. Then they'll like build the clay table on the call, and it works for some people, but you probably are not getting to the root of the problem, and you'll close a lot of deals. They're going to be small deals. It's not going to be a deep partnership, most likely, just because you didn't take that time up front to.
I had a mentor who was a very successful salesperson who was like, no one cares about you mm-hmm. or your widget or whatever thing you're selling. They care about how you can help them solve their problem quickly. Yeah. So the language we use, the questions we ask, the things we show, the things we talk about should be really centric on them. What's cool is you can practice, right? Like you can try different ways of doing discovery. It can be electronic. It can be over teleconference. You can create a form. You can iterate the types of discovery questions you ask, but I think that's where I think you go from great to like super awesome, is how we identify with like buyers' challenges and their goals.
Nice. All right. Any other closing thoughts before we sign off?
No, just sending you a lot of gratitude for this awesome community you've built. I'm super lucky. I know a lot of other people are, that we've invested in the time and space to, be a part of the Clay Bootcamp community and learn. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. A great investment in myself. So
awesome. Thank you for really thank you for the kind words. And I'm so glad you've been successful and part of the, part of the community.